What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The Celestial Compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Beal. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Beal.
Greetings, Earthlings. I'm Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, welcoming you to Celestial Compass. We're broadcasting at the very beginning of the month of August, and I want to update the forecast for the month. Just alert you to some important things that are going on right now. First off, pretty much, an awful lot of the sky is retrograde right now, and much of the retrograde action is in fire signs. And I'd like to just alert you to paying attention to your energy, monitoring it, noticing when something's triggering you, and looking at it in terms of, what maybe can I put in a different way of being. The big one that everyone pays attention to is Mercury, and it will be moving into its direct station later this week, or actually the degree of it will not actually become direct until August 11th, and it'll still be a few weeks or a few days until it starts moving again. So as it does this, there's a terrific amount of activity in the sky involving communication and revelations and sharing ideas, and then ultimately acting on what we've learned, acting on what's been dredged up in the past few weeks. Mars is going to move into the sign of Libra and team up with the two cosmic change agents, Uranus and Pluto, in a round robin of energy called a grand trine. And this grand trine is going to be fueled by Saturn and Neptune in one part in Aries, kind of blasting you into unpremeditated, bold action, maybe rebelling against authority some. And then the other is that Mercury retrograde also in fire, contributing information that you're going to be acting on. Know that it's going to be fast and furious, probably pretty chaotic. Big surprise, right? And keep in mind, self-care is critical, and fueling that, the skies this month coming up are giving us one of the most beautiful days of the year. On the 12th, the two planets of indulgence meet in the sign of Cancer, Venus and Jupiter. I have declared this National Take Your Teddy Bear to Work Day. Make a point to do something incredibly nurturing for yourself, even if it's going to a spa, taking a long bath, bringing food to work, treating yourself to a really nice meal. Really, really regroup. Go back into the energy of something that makes you feel safe and secure and nourished and nurtured. And that will refuel you so that you can go off into the world dealing with whatever is out there. And one final thing, remember that how you look at things, the kinds of thoughts that you let run through your mind really do mold the perspective through which you view reality. And what we have happening in the first half of the month is an open invitation to look at things differently and to start, at least in your mind, to create the world you want to live in. So you'll get a lot more about this in my forecasts for the month of August, and also the Aquarius full moon. Both of these are at empowermentunlimited.net and omtimes.com. and my YouTube channel, Professional Aquarian. And at my site and also my YouTube channel, you can find weekly podcasts as well. So stay abreast of what is going on. And now I am very happy to welcome our guest for today, who's a fellow author and a fellow multi-hyphenate who does something else in addition to practicing astrology. I'd like to introduce you to astrologer and clinical social worker, Carmen Turner Schott, author of Your Astrological Energy, Maximize the Power of Your Birth Chart. Welcome, Carmen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'd like to start. I always like to find out how people get to astrology. So, what's your origin story? How did you find it or it find you?
Yeah, well, a great question. It all started when I was a senior in high school. I was 16 and I was a little bit different than everyone in my family. I would dream things that would happen. I was afraid of the dark. I'd have all these strange things and my parents were like, it's just your imagination. And I was raised in the Midwest in Missouri. And so didn't know about spirituality or astrology or any of this stuff back in the 90s. But one night I came home from a basketball game and I always had to have my door looking out into the hall with the nightlight on. And I went to bed like normal, and I woke up in the night and there was a glowing orb of light in my doorway. And it was big and it was like bigger than a softball. And I tried to yell for my mother because, it was the unknown. And at the time I was terrified and I had no voice and I was frozen. So I couldn't move. I had no voice. All I had control of was my mind. And I kept thinking, please don't have this come in my room over and over again. Like you said, the power of the mind. And it did not. It just stayed in the door sill and then it'd go down the hall and come right back in my door sill. And it went across the bathroom and it floated there for hours. I laid there watching this thing and it was beautiful. I mean, it was yellow, white, gold, it looked fluorescent like water, like watery substance. And I didn't know what it was. And I still kind of have ideas, but I still absolutely don't know. But after hours, it released me and I was able to yell, Mom, look in my doorway. And, my mother was always a skeptic, and she's like, she was quiet. I said, do you see it? Yes. I go, what is it? I don't know. So my mother saw something, finally experienced something supernatural and believed me, for the first time. And it wasn't my imagination. But then she started trying to rationalize it. She's like,
oh, yeah.
Well, maybe someone's shining a flashlight in. I'm like, Mom, it has form. It's like moving up and down the hall. She said, maybe it's a lightning bug. Like it's huge.
Oh, God.
She's like, just go back to sleep. And I'm like, what the heck? And my dad and brother were on a fishing trip. So it was just me and her. I laid there till I passed out because I was afraid. And I woke up the next day and my mother was in the kitchen. She said, that was not a lightning bug. I don't know what that was. And she went to work the next day. And a lady at her office was into a group called Eckankar. I don't know if you heard of that back in the 90s. And my mom didn't know what it was. And the lady was a believer in all these spiritual things, angels. And she gave me a little book to read. And it was about angels and spirit guides. And I started getting obsessed. So that year, I went to a little mystical bookstore in St. Louis, Missouri called Mystic Valley. And I got a little book on astrology. It just drew me. It said Virgo. And I knew, I'm a Virgo. And I didn't know what that meant. So I read it and I was obsessed. I'm like, this is me. And then I learned how to do charts by hand and started just self-teaching myself. I think one of the other first books I got was Astrology Cosmic Science by Isabel Hickey, and I was doing by hand and doing all these things, and it became my passion. And I just started practicing on friends and family and became an astrologer around 19 when I was in graduate school to be a counselor. And I realized this is more powerful than normal therapy. And I want to use this as a tool of self-awareness to help validate, people's lives and the things that happen to them. And I think one of the biggest things that helped me with, having astrology as a tool was that I was I felt very alone and very different than everyone in my life because I would have these weird spiritual experiences. And then when I realized I had planets in the 12th house and 8th house, It all made
Uh-huh.
sense. And so that became my passion, those two houses. And I've spent my whole life researching really the 12th and 8th houses and writing books about both of those as well. So I love to talk about that. I have research in that on certain placements in those houses and how a lot of people share similar spiritual experiences. It's spiritual gifts is what I call them.
It's so funny that therapists are often told, and psychiatrists particularly,
Yeah.
that they spend their lives working out their own issues, and so how fascinating that an astrologer would be drawn to her own understanding herself. I think a lot of us do that, even
Yeah.
though we practice it, you get a new book and you immediately flip to your own placements. Like, what does it say about me?
Yeah,
It's just
absolutely.
human nature. Now,
Yes.
so you were already doing this while you were studying clinical social work. How
Yes.
did you start weaving the
Yeah.
2 modalities into each
Yeah.
other?
Well, I really, really got into Carl Jung's work, on the archetypes and dreams and all that. And it just was natural to me. It just was very psychological to me, when I would explain the key energies, the key traits. And that's really what I learned through these years of being an astrologer is that it's energy. I would walk into the room and I would feel someone's, fire, air, earth, or water. I would know their rising sign, or I would like, are you a Leo? Yes. I started, really doing experiments with my senses, I guess you could say, and
Mhm,
seeing that, okay, how do I know this? Because it's energy and it's so accurate. And people tell me I can guess people's signs. Like it's freaky. And I'm like, no, you have an ability. You're
mhm.
sensing energy. You're an empath. And so I teach, my goal has been to open up minds because, as a social worker, I tell a story. I'm going to tell a little story about what happened. When
Sure.
I was working with children, I used to work with runaway teens and children in adoption preservation when I was a civilian social worker before I got into working with trauma survivors, which I've done for the past 25 years. But back then it was kids. I love kids and teens. And I had a coworker who knew I believed in astrology, and this was in a normal job, right? Youth service. And she said, I have a friend whose son is really struggling and I'm wondering if you could do his chart. And she wanted to, talk to you. And I'm like, okay. So I went to their house and met this little guy. And what he was doing was he was drawing cemeteries and he was drawing tombstones and he was very
Mm,
obsessed with death. Okay. And he was like 9, probably 8 or 9. And he was afraid of the dark, which I had that. He wanted a nightlight on. He would tell his mom that there was a man that would visit him.
mm,
And she had taken him to the psychiatrist. Of course, they wanted to medicate him. And she didn't want to do that because she believed, she had spiritual gifts, she believed in, and it was open minded. So she didn't quite know what was going on with him. Well, I did his chart. This little guy had a stellium in the 8th house. I
mhm.
mean, everything and a lot of Scorpio. And I'm like, he's connected to the dead. He is connected. And this is what I'm thinking when I saw his chart. And this is when I started really getting into 8th house research. But I asked her, has he had a grandparent or anyone pass away? She goes, well, my dad, but he never met him. And I'm like, oh. And I said, have you showed him pictures? And I'm just kind of meeting with them. She showed, no, she hadn't. So when she showed him the picture, he said, that's the man in my room, was his
Oh,
grandpa.
oh my.
Well, she cried, she got chills, I got chills. And it was like, she was so relieved because if it was up to modern medicine, they would have said that, he needed to be medicated his whole life. He was a
Mhm,
little kid. I believe as children, we have natural abilities, but the world, our parents, if they're not encouraging it or they don't understand it, sometimes we shut it down because we don't have, anyone to teach us how to use our gifts. So a lot of 8th and 12th house people, reach out to me and I try to help them because of my own journey with these experiences that I could not explain logically to anyone, but I know they happened and I know they were real. And even in graduate school, I had things happen that had to do with, I dream about people before they die. They come to me and I wake up and I know. And both my grandmothers passed away after I dreamed about them. And I kind of knew when I woke up. And to me,
mm.
I think that's my 8th house moon and Jupiter and Chiron conjunct in my 8th house is what I always thought it was in Aries. But I really think that I didn't understand it. And now I see it as a blessing, not a curse, not anything to be afraid of. And I encourage people, not to buy into the negative things about the 8th and 12th houses. There's a lot of positive things and gifts that you can use to help people when you have planets in those 2 houses. So those have been my passion. That's kind of how I've seen the difference in bringing it into just with clients. When I did private practice, I didn't tell everyone, oh, I'm an astrologer. It was just like,
Mhm.
it was like a tool in my toolbox, just like I have mindfulness tools. I have, breathing exercises, trauma, visualization, all these things you do, CBT, cog behavior therapy, changing your
Mhm.
thoughts, it was just a tool. And I would have it because I would know their birthday and I would know their year, at least a minimum, right? And I would know their sign. And so I would see their energies in, as we're doing counseling, play out in a normal way and different traits. And it just kind of validated that, everyone, even if they don't believe in astrology affects them. We're living in,
Mhm.
and one of the things is, I've had a lot of a lot of in this field, and judgment, or people say, oh, it's evil, all this stuff, and I just laugh because it's not evil. It is a powerful tool of self-awareness. It is a healing tool. It is not evil. I mean, you can use anything and make it bad. We have therapists that use people's trust to re-abuse and traumatize them and claim that it's healing their trauma. There's bad people out there, right? So, this is a tool that, if used correctly, which most people, that I know use it correctly, to help you understand yourself. We're just telling you what you know about your own life. And then we also are validating, like what's going on in the sky right now, like you shared, all the energies. We can look at the transit chart and we can let people know, hey, this energy is in, affecting this area of your life. These are some potential things that you might feel or happen. And, you have free will and choice, but, be aware of how the sky, how the energy of the planets affect you, because it does. It affects us each day, each week, the moon. And so I just am passionate about opening people's minds to it. And that's why when I write books, I try to write them in a very basic way, so
Mhm.
anyone can pick up my book and understand it. You don't have to be an astrology expert, or know, all the degrees and how to cast a chart by hand to read my books. It's very basic energies and traits that I try to teach, and things I've researched just from doing charts all these years. So this book is about harnessing each of the 12 signs, because 2 questions I get a lot is, what's my soul mission? Why am I here? And the other question I get a lot is it a bad thing that I have no planets in one house, or I don't
Oh,
have any
yeah.
planets
Oh,
in a
yeah.
sign? I hear that all the time. So that's kind of what inspired this book, is all 12 signs exist within all of us. And we can
Mhm.
harness those energies, even if we don't have a planet there, because you have one of the signs on one of the houses on the cusp. It's going to be there. So if you really want to harness Scorpio, my North Node Scorpio, I have no other planets in Scorpio. That's been a hard area for me. Like, how am I ever going to be a Scorpio? That's my soul mission. So I read everything I can about Scorpio, and I try to harness the energies of Scorpio and become more Scorpio. And so we all can do that, and if you really love a certain sign, you can try to learn more about them and be more like them, and harness their traits, and whatever area of life they're in. And so this book, you'll use all of the book. You can read every
Mhm.
bit of it. It's not just a sun sign chapter book, but I hope
No,
people.
no, it's not a cookbook at all, and actually one thing I wanted to stress
Yeah,
for listeners is, that it's comprehensive in the different ways you can look at a sign. So, you take the sign's energy and you show how it expresses
yeah,
in every placement,
yes,
in every house, and then through the transits. So there's
yeah,
something, so you people could use it as a
yeah,
reference for anything going on. Now, what made you decide to take that approach?
yeah. I um I really wanted to show people the power of the transits, because, a lot of transits books, people are afraid of buying them or reading them because they think, oh, it's too complex for me. Like I'm not an astrologer. I can't do that. So I wanted to make it really simplistic and show how Sun, Moon, Venus, Mercury, even the fast moving transits, how that affects us and how long each of those affect you through each of the houses. So it's kind of like having, a little calendar guide, where's the moon today? What house is it in for me, to watch, and learn more about how these things will affect you. So I wanted to make a practical guide that kind of fit everything in there. I wanted to put more in, but this is the thickest book I've ever written. When it came out, when they sent it to me, I'm like, oh man, I knew it took a while to write, but when I saw it, I'm like, yeah, that was a big one. It's thick. And I'm like, it was a lot of work. But I put a lot in there, and all of it, a lot of it is what I've seen and what people shared that they've experienced with me, when they've had these transits, and how I experienced these personal transits. I've lived through Pluto transiting my fourth house. I've lived through Uranus through my seventh, eighth, and now in my ninth. I've lived through Neptune in the sixth. Now it's in my seventh. Sometimes, I want to share my knowledge of things I have experienced, and then also what clients have experienced with the transits, and wanted to make it basic and also just a heads up, right? Like, these are potentials of things that could happen. You're not being punished. These are destined, fated things that we have chose to learn. And so to me, we pick when we come into this realm, and we chose our chart. People always ask me, well, what about, C-section babies and all this stuff? Is that a bad thing? I'm like, if they're a C-section baby, they chose to be a C-section baby. Like my daughter was a month early, and it was an emergency C-section. She was supposed to be a Libra, and she's a Virgo. She ended up being the end of August, like me, the day before my birthday, actually. And almost, it was almost on my birthday, but it was an hour, missed it by an hour. But she always draws Libras, her and I just realized this. She's 20. She's like, Mom, everyone I like, everyone I'm attracted to, all my friends are Libra, but they drive me nuts. That's what she said to me. And I'm like, well, you were supposed to be a Libra. And she's like, what? I said, yeah, you're a whole month early. I said, so you're just drawing Libras because, you changed your mind. That's what I said to her. But you see this play out, and I do love, it helps me understand other people. And that's what helped me as a counselor, as a social worker, and as a supervisor. at work, with family, with my friends. Especially, it's like, instead of feeling like a victim, or feeling like people hurt you all the time, and when you understand their energy, you won't take it personal. Aries is Aries, Leo is Leo. When you start knowing them, like, then I would help them, like, say, hey, we need to put you out in front of everybody. You need to be the one to speak, because I would tap into people's strengths that I would see in their chart, even if they didn't see it. And I'm like, you like to be up there talking, and they would laugh. I had a coworker that was a Leo, and he could sell anything to anyone. He was a smooth talker. He was so good up on stage, and I'm like, let's put him up there because we want a yes. And so he would get up there and brief, at work. And I had friends that were real sensitive, kind of behind the scenes type, that liked to, fix computers and stuff like that. They were Aquarius or Geminis, or, had a lot of Earth, and so I would, hey, can you come look at my computer? And they loved that, so just using what I knew to get along with people. And it really helped me, because in my life, I would say, people in my career of 25 years, I worked with sexual assault survivors, but I worked for the military, and I worked with commanders, officer. I worked for the Air Force, and I had to learn how to get along and handle many different types of personalities, bureaucracy, politics, and everyone would always ask me, hey, can you deal with this? Because they knew that I could deal with hard situations, because even people that everyone was afraid of, I would connect with them. And then and I'm like, I'd be real nice, and people would always ask me, because I'm like, okay, I feel them out. I'm like, okay, I what's their sign? Do you know their birthday? I'd always ask right around. And that's what I would do. And people would tease me, and they'd say, Carmen, is it a full moon? Is Mercury retrograde, at work? And I would like, yeah. And they're like, I knew it. And like, I would teach people these basic things, and then to open, like to plant seeds, to open up their minds, that astrology is not evil. Astrology is a powerful tool of self-awareness. And it still shocks me. I've got hate mail. I mean, through my, as an astrologer through the years, I've got nasty grams, emails that I'm going to hell because I do astrology and all this. No. And it now I get angry about it. I'm like, how dare you? But in the old days, I used to get my feelings hurt, or I'd be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do astrology. You get in your head, and it's like I was talking to a professional astrologer, Steve Judd, Steve, the UK astrologer.
Yeah,
I interviewed him about ethics, and we were talking because, if you get 100 good comments, you get one bad one. That one bad one is the one you focus on. And you have to stop doing that. You got to focus on, okay, out of 100 comments, there's only one negative one. All the other 99 people liked it, right? That's what you got to shift your thoughts, and don't let anyone distract you from doing what your passion is. And I had to learn that the hard way, because there were times where I almost walked away from doing astrology. And yeah, and then, you go through cycles. There was a couple years where I didn't do consults. I just wrote. I didn't do any readings, and I didn't do fairs anymore and all that. But then I got back into it, and I see somebody wrote, yeah, I'm a Mars in Gemini, 9th house. I see somebody asked, do I have Gemini? Yes, I can talk, and I'm a Virgo. So,
well, we're going to take a break, and you paused. We're going to take our break right here, and we'll be back. Everybody hang tight. We've got more to discuss.
Om Times TV.
Want help with your own celestial compass? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, for Astro Insight forecasts for each week, month, and new and full moon. Want to explore the personal impact? Make a decision? Understand another person? It is possible. Click the Services tab to book a personal session with me. That address again? empowermentunlimited.net.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking today to Carmen Turner Schott, author of Your Astrological Energy. I want to circle back to something that we touched on early in our conversation, that you've talked about how you will use, or you have historically used, your astrology information and background to inform and kind of suss things out with counseling clients. But what about the reverse? Did you learn things in your social work that you have carried over into how you deal with counseling astrology clients?
Absolutely. One of the connections that I made really, early on is with trauma, and people that had trauma. I started noticing that a lot of them had planets in the 8th house or Scorpio or a strong Pluto in their chart. I mean, it was like clockwork. And I wrote some articles about it, because, when I would, meet with my clients, I started wondering, and they were Scorpio suns, or, or I would at least have the basics, even if I didn't have their time or place. I would know their place, maybe not the time, because I wouldn't ask, that specifically in that kind of environment, but I would be able to look and see these patterns. And then people would kind of seek me out. Like, other counselors would even refer people to me, and they had a lot of eighth house planets, and I resonate with that because I had a lot of trauma in my life, my early years. I lost a friend when I was 16 through an accidental shooting in my hometown, and I never understood that. And then I had lost other friends to gun violence. So there was this pattern in my life of losing people close to me through a crisis. And I always was really good in crisis intervention. And it's like I just knew what to do if there was something, really serious. And suicide prevention, I worked in suicide prevention. I did a suicide hotline. I've done a lot of things like that. And I think it's the eighth house, the ability to be resilient and to overcome and become a phoenix. So I call eighth house people phoenixes, because they go through these transformations and rebirths, and they go through a lot of hard times, but they're strong. They're very resilient people, and then they're healers. So they go out, and I find that they go into the energy healing field, or they get into astrology, they get into spirituality, and helping other people and serving others to help them heal the same wound they have. And so I see that connection in the work that I did with trauma survivors. Some things, like I worked a lot with teens that would had cutting, would cut, some very serious things like that. Depression, of course, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, different things like that. I would see different astrological energies or patterns in that. And I've really tried to research that, because I had a NCGR ask me to write an article. I'm going to do some research, share my research on the eighth house, and one of their next ones. I did a 12th house study. So it's like I randomly asked for 100 people in my Facebook groups. I have a Facebook group just for 12th house and 8th house. I've had them since Facebook started. I got tons of people in there. And that's how I collect my research too. It's all validating, hearing people share and their stories in my groups. But I did 100, asked for people to send me their charts. I didn't know who they were, 100 of them randomly. I asked them 5 major questions, 5 patterns that people have shared with me that they feel when they have planets in the 12th, things they've experienced. And 99.9 of them said yes to all 5 patterns. And so that article was published in the fall in the NCGR magazine. And now I'm going to do the same with the 8th house, because they said, we really need to research astrology more so we can become more of a science, a respected, not a pseudoscience, because it's like psychology. Back in the day, it wasn't considered a science. Therapy was not, and now it is, because they have research. So with astrology, I think the research piece is really important. And I'm doing that with the 8th and 12th houses, and real people's real stories, and confirming different placements and different things, for me. So yeah, I've always seen, I think, that's another question you talked about, is a lot of astrologers maybe didn't go to counseling, school, or take classes in psych.
Right.
And so how do you develop the core competencies and the skills to do therapy? Because to me, doing a consultation with someone is like therapy. It's deep. And so if you don't, I always recommend astrologers get trained or take some classes in crisis intervention, safety planning, all of that, because, in my life, I've had clients that were not okay on the other end of the Zoom. And if I didn't have that skill set to know how to assess that they were depressed, or that they had bad thoughts, or that they were in a domestic violence situation. Okay, I've had that. I've had people have panic attacks live during a session with me. I knew what to do. And I think it's good to have a lot of skills if you're dealing with very serious things when you're doing astrology charts, because people have triggers. And people's traumas can be triggered when they're talking about their problems, right? And so I think basic counseling 101, Kepler College of Astrology offers a certificate of counseling astrology program. and I'm kind of helping them develop some ethics courses in there and stuff like that. But I recommend take as many classes as you can and learn all the tips and things you can put in your toolbox, as an astrological counselor, because, it's different because we don't have a license like in astrology. You can get certified as an astrologer, but in social work we have a clinical license that we have to renew. We have to take all this education to renew it. We have ethical codes and standards, and so I think astrology is kind of moving in that direction where there's ethic codes for the organizations like OPA and NCGR and stuff. But I think research is the key to really show that astrology is a real tool, and it is not just a sun sign pop astrology stuff on TikTok or whatever. It's deep, and it is healing, and it is a tool that I think should be used to help others, and I think it really can. And I think a lot of people are getting interested in it now more than ever, whether it's Pluto and Aquarius, whatever people think. But I think it is going to become more and more popular as a tool, because people want answers. Like I remember when I did a chart for someone in grad school, they had been struggling with the relationship with their father for many, many years. They wouldn't even speak to their father. And when I did their chart, they had the sun in the 12th house. And I had known there was a pattern of a lot of people that I did charts for that had the sun in the 12th house that felt like they had an absent, missing father figure. Either they weren't in the home, they didn't participate in their life, or they were emotionally distant or unavailable. They felt that way towards about the father, even if maybe the father did try, right? Maybe there was a father in the home, but whatever it was, their perception was that they lacked a parent. And so when I told her about this and helped her, she cried, and she was thanking me. She said, "This has been more helpful than 2 years of therapy, just hearing what you just told me." And then that's when I got chills. I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this in what I do as a tool, because I saw how great it helped people, how quickly, and all it did was validate what her experience. That's it. And so that's what I use it for, is to help people. And why people ask me, why did this happen to me? Why, you can look at transits, but a lot of things are in the 8th house, with trauma. And I've had people come to me and say, I don't remember being abused. I don't remember being traumatized, but I'm afraid. I have a lot of planets in the 8th house. Was I abused? And I'm like, I don't want you to focus on the negative. Just focus on the positive things here. I said, if you don't remember it, don't try to dig into anything. I mean, unless you were, don't make something bad just because you read in a book that you might have sexual abuse or trauma. Don't do that. And so that made him feel better, and I said, let's look at the strengths of the 8th house. Let's look at your resiliency. Let's look at your power to heal people, your psychic abilities, your intuition, and so that's how I use it, is to help people harness the energy of their chart and to use all of their energies to heal themselves and others. Because that's the thing I learned as a social worker, is that a lot of people that go into the counseling field are trying to heal themselves. So they go into this field and they're not healthy people. Okay. Not all of them are. I've worked with some that should not be working with people because they never dealt with their own childhood stuff. Right. So I always try to deal with they say, if you're going to be a counselor, you need to go to counseling yourself. That's the thing, or psychoanalysis, whatever. So I would go to counseling, I would try to work on myself. I did energy healing, I did all these things, to heal my own wounds. So I didn't react or let a situation with the patient or client cloud my judgment. And so I think it's about knowing yourself and knowing if you need a little bit of help. And sometimes people do heal through helping others, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think if you're really going to be, a astrologer, a counseling astrologer, depending, I know some people, they don't want to do any psychological astrology or counseling astrology. They just want to do astrocartography. They just want to tell people where the best places to live, and things like that, because they don't want to hear people's problems. I've had people tell me that. They're like, no, that's not what I do. Some people just want to, look at the world events, what's going on in the world right now, how history, the different countries, playing out. everyone has a different way they like to use astrology, and that's okay. So no, it's kind of like know your skill set. Like as a therapist, you know, you have to put all your skills on Psychology Today, which I have out there. If I'm not an expert in something, I'm going to refer to someone that is. You know, I'm not going to try to, you know, do counseling with someone that I've never dealt with the issue. You know, I know military families. I've dealt a lot with sexual assault, trauma survivors. That's my thing. But eating disorders, I'm not an expert. I've worked with teens and kids before. But if there's an expert, I would rather refer to them. You know, so it's like that. If someone comes to you and really, you know, wants to dig into transits, but that's not your thing, or, you know, do progress charts, it's good to refer out. You know, it's like have your little toolbox of referrals, just like therapists do. So, and I've referred people. Or know yourself. Like if my energy it's an energy thing. Sometimes my energy gets depleted and I know that I'm blocked. You know, I always call it, I feel blocked. Some people that come to me, I'm not able to do a chart for them. And I listen to that. You know, I used to get upset about it. Well, I don't want to cancel. I don't want, and I know now, okay, I'm not meant to. So I'll say, you know, right now the energy is not, it's blocked. It's not you, it's me. And I'm not going to be able to do your astrology chart right now. Would you like me to refer some people to you? And then, or they're like, can we try again in a couple months? Sure. So they write back. And if the energy's flowing and I'm in the vibe, it feels right and the timing's right, then I end up getting to meet that person, do their chart. But, you know, I refer a lot of people. I cancel. I, you know, have to send people away at times because I have to be 100%. When I'm doing an astrology consult. You know, you got to be timing's important, and know yourself. You know if you're burned out or tired. You shouldn't be doing any help with others if you're not feeling okay. So it's self-care, really. It's about self-care. You know,
the theme of the summer.
Yeah, self-care, absolutely. But no,
Can we get back to your book for just a second?
Yeah.
Will you show people the cover? This is what it looks like.
Your Astrological Energy. It's a thick one, guys.
And it's published by Llewellyn, right? And
yes.
And the publication date is
this Friday, the 8th.
Friday the 8th. So
if you pre-ordered, it'll be in your box on Friday. But you can still go pre-order now. So
and okay, so how is this is different from the other ones you've written? What are your other books?
Yeah, I have Sun Signs, Houses, and Healing with Llewellyn. That is about how each sign heals, transforms, and becomes more resilient. It's more about each of the sun signs. I have Moon Signs, Houses, and Healing, which is about the moon signs, how they find happiness, joy, comfort, you know, and their passion. And then I have Phoenixes and Angels, Mastering the 8th and 12th Astrological Houses. I have the 12th Astrological House, Fallen Angels, which is about the 12th house. I have the Mysteries of the 8th Astrological House, Phoenix Rising, which I self-published. I have Astrology's Magical Nodes of the Moon, which is about our soul mission, the North and South nodes, that came out last year with O Books. And am I forgetting anything? Those are the big ones. And then this one. And then I have a book coming out in November called Astrology Zodiac Archetypes. And it's about bouncing past life patterns. And I wrote it with a friend of mine, Bernie Ashman. We co-wrote it. So I got that book coming out too. So yeah, I'm excited. I love to write. And
a different publisher.
That's O Books. Yeah, that's O Books. I have two publishers. Yeah. So I love Llewellyn. You know, I love working with them. And you know, this idea has been in my head for a while. Trying to express, you know, how to harness the different energies. You know, I talk about each rising sign, every planet in each sign, every house, transits, like you talked about. I talk about, you know, Aries energy words, Aries motto, harnessing Aries energy, you know, ways to harness their key traits for each of the 12 signs. And then the transits through each of the houses, you know, each of the signs. And, it's a lot of fun, and it's a big one. But you'll use the whole book. Whereas in my sun signs book, you might read about your own and maybe a couple friends. But this book, you will use the whole book, because once you have your birth wheel, which you can get at astro.com or through an astrologer, you can look up, oh, okay, Neptune's in my first house. I'm going to go and look up that. Oh, I got Pluto in the 8th. Go to the 8th house chapter, you know, and you'll look it up. And everything I share is things that I have seen in my life or with clients. And I try to make it real basic, and where you know exactly what energy and how it might feel having that transit or having that placement in your birth chart.
Mhm. And one thing that I found innovative
Yeah.
was having a section on how to harness the energy. And I like, for example, Leo, harness listening skills. Who would have thought? Where did you get that?
I got that from all my Leo friends. I got a lot of Leo friends, and yeah, it's pretty neat, you know. And I have friends, and I'll tell them, listen, um, you don't listen to me. And they're like, oh, no, no, no. I'm like, no, because I said, do you really want my opinion? Because I'll tell you, but you still don't listen to what I tell you. And, but, every sign has that, and I met a Gemini once. This was so funny. They walked out, they're like, listen, I'm a Gemini. And they said, don't tell me any of your secrets because I will share it. And I'm not doing it because I'm being mean. I just can't keep my mouth shut. And I love to communicate and network with people. I'm like, okay. They're like, if you don't want anyone to know, don't tell me. I had a Gemini tell me that once. And I laughed. I'm like, I understand. I understand. At least you know yourself, right? I mean, yeah, it's like it's hard to keep a secret, is what she told me. And I said, well, that is great that you know that about yourself, and you're telling me up front. Don't tell me anything you don't want anyone else to know, right? So it's really about learning the different things you can harness. So like it's really about learn about each of the signs, and then I talk about ways to harness the Leo energy. Have fun, be playful, pursue hobbies. With Scorpio, let go, forgive, let yourself release the past, just different tips, way to, let yourself feel deeply. If you really want to understand each sign, I try to explain how I see them in the book and how their energy is. And like I said, I'm trying to harness Scorpio. That's my North Node. That's my soul mission this lifetime. And I'm used to being a Taurus. I'm a South Node Taurus, and I don't like change. And all my life has been is a lot of change and unexpected stuff. So I have to get comfortable with that. And now that I'm going to be 50, I'm different than I used to be. I would say I'm more like a Scorpio now than I ever was. And I thought I'm never going to be a Scorpio. I remember saying, how am I going to do this? How am I going to be this North Node? And life experience, though, helped me get into my node. And that's how I see with every chart I've done for every person I meet. We always get into our North Node naturally. The universe gets us there.
That's so funny. Mine's in the 9th house, and I could give you the list of things I've done, starting with living in a foreign country as a teenager.
Yes. Yes. Where did you live? Where did you live?
In Germany.
So did I.
I was in Munich.
I was near Ramstein, a Kaiserslautern twice. And this is why astrology is a fact. I was born in Missouri in the Midwest, never left the country, and I married an Air Force guy, and our first duty station was Germany. And I was 23 years old, and I thought, what am I doing? And moved over there, but guess what? Mars is in my 9th house, and so is my South Node. So it was like I was meant to go to a foreign country. Yeah, it's really neat. You can see it play out. It's like I would have never thought I lived somewhere different and traveled and stuff. I'm like, it's weird. It feels like it didn't happen now because now I'm back in America, so that's neat. Munich's beautiful. Yeah, Bavaria down in there, very nice. The Alps, very pretty.
Yes, it was, and it completely changed my outlook. My North Node is up there with a stellium, right at the midheaven. So I'm a big advocate for you got to learn a foreign language because it changes the way you look at the world. You adopt somebody else's viewpoint, and you understand inherently that you're not the only. Your viewpoint is not the only one. I've written quite a bit about being the outsider and going into, because that's happened throughout my life in different ways. Being the one person who's different. Yes, I have Chiron in Aquarius. So
I love it. I love that. And you're right. Like, German is a hard language to learn. And my daughter, we took her the second time we got stationed there, and she took German. She loves Spanish, but she had to take German in school, and they would have them practice in the villages, to go order. And it was a good experience for her. Her moon's in the 9th house with her Chiron. So my daughter.
Okay. Yeah. No, I got thrown into a
Yeah.
German school with a German last name. It was sink or swim. So
Wow. No,
Mhm.
that would be hard. I knew some other kids that their parents had them in German school because they wanted them to learn another language because they thought it was be a good experience for them. But it had to be hard. I can't imagine.
Someday I'll write about it. I've got
You should.
diaries.
Yeah.
I had a diary with the cover Atlantis on $5 a day. That was my first one. I finished
Oh.
that very quickly. Anyway, so getting back to you and your work, actually one other question I had was whatever of the harnessing
Yeah.
powers that made me go, this is interesting. For
Yeah.
Taurus, harness peace. Where did you get that?
Yes, that is one of the things that this is the crazy thing. Everywhere I go, I have Tauruses around me. And at work, everyone in my office was Taurus and Scorpio. And here, those are my nodes. I'm the only Virgo,
Mhm.
right? And all of the Tauruses that I meet, I always feel they have a very calming, uh, grounding presence. They may not realize it, but they kind of bring peace to the environment because they're so earthy, right? They're really connected to the earth, in my opinion, with their senses and everything. So their energy to me feels like a warm, peaceful energy. And the ones I know, they don't do well with crisis. They don't like change. And I dealt with it at work. And like, but you said we're going to do this, and I said, yeah, but I changed my mind. Which drives them crazy. And they get very disrupted. So Tauruses need to harness peace because they need to have stability. They need to have a routine. They need to kind of, if their routine gets messed up, they can get sick. I had a coworker like this. If something went crazy, she would end up coming in the next day with a sore throat,
Hmm.
and that was her kind of response to any kind of crisis or change that wasn't, she liked to control things and know what was going to happen. So I always tell them, don't, they let go and just go with the flow. It's like, be peaceful. The more they ground themselves and be peaceful, the easier it is for them to really adapt to change. But to me, they're peaceful. They bring a peaceful presence into the environment. My daughter is a Taurus rising, and she has to have peace and harmony and quiet. And to me, that also means quiet. A lot of Tauruses tell me they don't like a lot of chit chat, and people being loud drives them crazy. And my daughter's that way. She doesn't like it. She thinks I talk too loud when I start getting riled up. It's my Aries moon. She's like, Mom, you're yelling. I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, Mom, and my husband has some Taurus too. And I have a lot of friends, and they need peace. They need harmony. Yeah.
This is so funny because I have a Taurus girlfriend who, if I'm driving and I go, wee, can't stand
Yeah.
it. Like, stop
Oh,
making
no.
that sound.
It annoys them.
I
It annoys
understand.
them. Yeah, a lot of Tauruses love to just have their headphones on, listen to music. I had a friend in the cubicle land at work. Two of them were Tauruses. They couldn't focus because if they could hear sounds around them, people talk, which in cubicle land, that's what we have. They would have to have their earbuds in, or they can't focus. She would tell me, I can't focus. And another thing is, a lot of Tauruses can just do one thing at one time. They're not like a multitasker. They have one thing, they want to do it perfect and get it right, and then they'll move on to the next thing. Where I would have 10 things and I would be bugging the heck out of them. Hey, did you do this? No, I'm still on this one. So not everyone is a multitasker, and some people are more thorough. And that's one of Taurus's strengths, is that peace, that thoroughness, that dedication to get one thing done at a time. They cannot mentally do 10 things at a time. They're not made like that. And my daughter's that way. I had to learn from her. Mom, you're overwhelming me, or it's too much. You're asking me 5 different things. So I learned through having a kid too. They need peace and harmony. Yes.
So there's a question. Where are your books available? If someone wants to get or pre-order, can they do it at Llewellyn? Can they do it at Amazon or bookshop.org or
Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble. If you pre-order tonight, it'll probably be delivered Friday to your box this weekend. All my books are on Amazon, all of them. All of them are on Barnes and Noble. All my books with all the publishers. And also, if you go to my website, CarmenTurnerSchott.com, you can go to my books page, my books homepage, and I have some author copies of some of my books. And if you contact me through my website, you can purchase a book directly from me, and I'll send you a signed copy. So if you want any of my books I mentioned, 8th House, 12th House, Your Astrological Energy, I have author copies. Shoot me an email and I can send you a signed copy if you're interested.
And are you on social media anywhere?
Yes.
Do you have a handle? What's that?
Yeah, I got a YouTube channel, Carmen Turner Schott, and I have Facebook, Deep Soul Divers Astrology with Carmen Turner Schott, Instagram, Carmen Turner Schott Author, and mostly Instagram and Facebook. Those are my two. And I got some old YouTube videos. I try to post. I'm not on every day. I'm trying to build my YouTube and get on more. But I do have old stuff out there you can watch. But Instagram, Facebook, my website, best way to get a hold of me. And if you have planets in the 8th and 12th houses, I have my 12th house astrology private group and 8th house astrology private group that we have like 17,000 people from all over the world in there. You can post your chart, share your stories, and you'll feel support. It's like a support group. I've had to block a lot of people from the groups through the years. People got mad, but they're one of the first Facebook astrology groups that ever existed. And now there's a ton of them out there, but mine have always stayed, and I'm the admin, and I've kept it going. So all these years.
Very 8th house. That's Deep Soul Diving.
Yeah, Deep Soul Divers, 8th house, and the 12th Astrological House. And it has like an eyeball. There's not a lot of 12th house private groups, you can find it for sure. And my name will be in there as the admin.
Okay. Well, we've reached the end of our hour together. Thank you so much for hanging out and telling us about your unique way of combining what you do and all of your passions. I wish you great success with your book.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I look forward to the one that's coming out in the fall as well.
Yes,
all right.
Thank you.
So everyone, self-care. I just keep saying that. Self-care.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Bye all.
Bye.